you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. Go. So not a lot going on in college football. Spring practice is starting to come up here in the next few weeks. But why I bring it up is because, as has so often happened, whenever we get a lull in the calendar and there's not much going on, we can count on Nick Saban to say something very interesting that catches everybody's eye. Well, that certainly happened over the weekend when Nick Saban was speaking at the Alabama High School Coaches Association, and his favorite topic, NIL, came to the forefront. Now, you may remember Nick Saban, greatest coach of all time, for what it's worth. One thing he has not been afraid to do throughout his career, and specifically the last year, in his career, he's not been afraid to speak out about things that he is worried about in terms of college sports, the transfer portal, how offenses work, a lot of different things. And he's obviously been very outspoken about NIL. Not that he doesn't want players to get NIL money, but he doesn't think we should just be bidding on recruits. And whether you like it, I think most people agree. NIL, as it was intended, taking care of players on campus that have performed for your school, like that's what we all kind of thought NIL was. And so Nick Saban has not been very happy with the turn in recruiting, even though we all knew it was coming. He obviously had those comments about Texas A&M last summer. Texas A&M bought every recruit. Now, I didn't like that because we have no proof beyond a message board post, but he said that. He said something about Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter, that Travis Hunter was paid $1 million to go to Jackson State. Again, something that wasn't proven, but he's been very outspoken about, hey, is this what we want college football to be? And as I've said many times on this show, when Nick Saban says the term, is this what we want college football to be? He is always looking out for the best interests of college football. Nick Saban has had all the success that he more success than anyone could ever imagine. Right now, when he's talking about big picture issues in college football, it's because he genuinely cares about the present and future of the sport. So anyway, to get to the point, he was speaking at the Alabama High School Coaches Association in Montgomery on Saturday night, was asked about NIL, and here's what he had to say. He said, someone with one of the best cornerbacks in the nation, now keep in mind, someone could be a high school coach, a parent, whatever. Someone with one of the best corners in the nation came to me and asked if we would pay him $800,000 for the player to sign here. I told him he can go find another place to play. I'm not paying a kid a bunch of NIL money before he earns it. And so that definitely made headlines when Nick Saban, head coach, Alabama, says that one of the top cornerbacks in high school football, a person close to him, asked for $800K to sign on the dotted line to come to Alabama, and Nick Saban told him to take a hike. And so what I would say about this, one, it's obviously a very interesting headline. Two, one thing you guys and girls know about me. In general, I don't love talking about NIL speculation on this show, okay? Because in general, and I've said it many times, the thing that is not annoying about NIL, you just don't know what's true and what's false and how much of what is true. And what I mean by that is, and I've said this a few times, when Patrick Mahomes signs a contract extension, or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson this offseason, like, we know what the terms of the agreement are. This much money guaranteed this many years. With NIL, it's all rumor, conjecture, innuendo, which is great for guys like me that talk about this stuff every day, but it's not fair to the participants. And so because of it, I've been hesitant to go all in on Texas A&M. I've never believed that every recruit in their class of 2022 got $1 million. I said it at the time. I believe NIL was involved in many of those recruitments because it is involved with everyone, but I'm not going to come on here and say that NIL or Texas A&M paid this much money or Jordan Addison got this much money to go to USC. Do I think he got nothing? No. He's an established college player. It's NIL. It's 2022, now 2023. Of course, I believe Jordan Addison got something to go to USC. I also believe that Drake May probably got offers under the table to transfer out of North Carolina. I don't know if it was $5 million, but you get the point. I don't like to speculate on NIL because you don't know what's fact and you don't know what's fiction. With that said, though, this one I believe, because this isn't Nick Saban talking about what he heard or what he thinks happened, or, I read in the paper that Jackson State offered Travis Hunter this. This is Nick Saban. I was in a meeting with somebody who handles a high school player, a high school superstar, and they told me they wanted $800K. And so is it possible that he exaggerated the dollar amount a little bit? Maybe. But in general, I absolutely believe that somebody was shopping an elite defensive back and trying to get $800K. I could speculate on who it would be. I think everybody that follows recruiting probably has a name in mind, but that's not really important. What's important is Saban is talking about it. What's important is the number is out there. What is important is that I believe that, this is just where we are in college football. But we all know high school recruits are getting paid a lot of money. And so what's more interesting to me and what I want to focus on now, it's not so much that first part, because the first part is the one that gets all the headlines, right? Somebody wanted me to pay $800K to get this kid. That's interesting. But to me, what's more interesting is what Nick Saban said at the end. He said, I'm not paying a kid a bunch of NIL money before he earns it. And so to me, that is the more interesting part of the quote, because I believe that that is eventually where NIL is going to end up if it isn't there already. Now, look, are there always going to be schools, new coaches, new programs, new boosters that want to show off how much money they have that are willing to go above and beyond to sign elite high school talent? Yes, I believe that is always going to happen. You look at this cycle. Jaden Rashada, the NIL reports of $13 million, upwards of $13 million. That was a bidding war between two coaching staffs that wanted an established quarterback to headline their class. You could say whether it's going to work, whether it's not going to work, whether it's this, whether it's that. That was kind of what happened with Jaden Rashada. But what I also believe is that as time goes on, as we wrap our arms around NIL, I believe that most programs are probably going to eventually default to what Nick Saban just said. If we have an allotted amount of money, X number amount from our collective, why are we going to spend it on a high school player who is unproven? Let's give it to the guys that are already in the program to, one, keep them happy, two, keep them from hitting the portal to see what else is out there, and three, in rare cases, a player that could go to the NFL, let's retain him in college football right now. And I'll be blunt, I believe this is already actually happening, and I think we saw a little bit of this in this cycle. First off, remember the days leading up to when the transfer portal opened in December? If you remember those days, the word was, this is just going to be craziness. This is just going to be absurdity. Players are just going to enter the portal to see who can get the most money from what school. And to be clear, this did actually legitimately happen. This did actually legitimately happen. There were players that entered the portal just to kind of see what else is out there. Saban kind of told an interesting story at this event on Saturday where he said, according to one of the coaches that was there, that apparently one of his players wanted to get X amount of dollars, and he wanted Nick Saban or Alabama football to get his girlfriend into Alabama law school. So the point I'm trying to make, there are definitely players that entered the portal just to see what they could potentially get from a school or from their own school or whatever. But what I believe has already started to happen, if you look at the portal this year, I don't think it was actually nearly as crazy as people made it out to be. If you look at the biggest names to enter the portal, here is who most of them were. They were either group of 5 players that were looking to go up to the Power 5 level. They were players that were on the bench that weren't going to play at big-time schools. So Alabama did lose a bunch of players to the portal. They really only lost 1 to 2 guys that were actual difference makers. Javion Cohen, offensive lineman. You could argue Aaron Anderson, one of their wide receivers that ended up at LSU, is really good. But for the most part, it was backups at Alabama, backups at Ohio State, backups at Notre Dame. And then it was G5 guys, as I just said, maybe a grad transfer or two like a Sam Hartman. And it was guys from schools where the coaching staff got fired. So yeah, Nebraska lost a lot of guys to the portal because they want to see what else is out there because they had no commitment to. The point I'm trying to make, most of the best players at most of the best schools did not hit the portal. You didn't see a mass exodus of starters and stars from Ohio State, from Michigan, from Oregon, from Alabama, from Georgia, from USC, from Tennessee, whoever. And I believe that's what's starting to already happen, is schools are starting to allocate funds and say, you know what? If we're going to pay players, let's make sure we keep the guys in the locker room happy first. I find it very interesting that, again, we have some stories about this. Michigan started a collective about 3 weeks ago, specifically for players who are already in the program. So you're not eligible to receive any money or any compensation from the collective unless you're already on the roster. I spoke to a booster, not a big booster, but I spoke to a booster the other day from one of these other Big Ten schools, not Michigan, but, one of the other big ones, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State, whatever. And he said the same thing. He's like, I believe our guys are as well taken care of as anybody. We're just not going to get into bidding wars for high school players. Florida State is another one. And I talked about it, I think it was last Friday's show, where it feels like Florida and Miami are getting into a you-know-what measuring contest to try and sign the best high school players. Florida State is an elite team playing great basketball, or playing great football right now, going to be in the top 10 in the preseason, and they retained a bunch of guys that had the opportunity to go to the NFL. And most believe that NIL played a role in it. And so I believe this is where we're going to go with NIL in the next 3, 4, 5 years as people start to figure out NIL. One, it's hard to invest in freshmen for a few reasons. One, it's hard at the best schools to get them on the field. Now, Alabama and Georgia, and all, like guys are going to play, but look at Texas A&M this year. And I'm not implying that Texas A&M paid everybody, but if they're good enough to play, that's probably not a good sign. You don't want a bunch of 18-year-old kids in the program. And then two, beyond that, if they don't play right away, you paid them for nothing because they're going to hit the portal a la Quinn Ewers. So that's one. And then two, like I said, I just think it makes a lot of sense if you only have 10 million, 8 million, 4 million, 15, whatever the number is in your collective, pay the guys that are already on the roster because those are the guys that have already delivered. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do think that Nick Saban, I think this is one where I absolutely believe him. It's not that I've never believed Nick Saban before, but I absolutely believe him here. And I really do think that this might be a situation where Nick Saban is kind of letting, kind of the guard down on what NIL is going to look like going forward, where we're probably paying more likely the elite returnees more than elite high school players.